Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I don't know whether it's morning or evening, really. So it's good day. Good day, ladies and gentlemen, because I don't know what time of the day the program is going to be aired. Today, I will talk about technology, newly developing and emerging trends in technology in the housing sector. I'm very happy to be invited here in this forum because I was looking up for this kind of a forum for quite a while now, actually. And because I really wanted to understand that there were certain issues in India, the way we were producing the mass housing market, we were really going slow on technology innovations. Now, in any industrial activity, and housing is an industrial activity, we know that we have to leave some space, space in the pricing of the houses by which we create a margin through which we can do the kind of technology innovations. Now, what happens is that in a typically mass market of housing that we are pursuing, we tend to go for speculative land prices. So prices are very high, and we go on acquiring land, and then most of the houses and apartments that we buy are speculative in nature. So we end up having these swaths of unoccupied square feet, and though these high-rise apartments are promising us all the time, gated colonies with a lot of security and water supply from the ground by drawing groundwater, and electricity through generators, because most of these occupy suburban lands where these facilities, municipal corporation facilities, are not available. And this is why we, in these kinds of apartment living, we end up paying huge maintenance costs. And so you can see that there is very little scope for design activities in standardized houses, and so much goes in the maintenance of utilities, so much goes into the land prices, that we have very little margin for the real technology and innovations. Now we have to see that why is it that we need the design and the innovations, and towards what these innovations and designs are going. You see, designs are going towards, of course, the climate. I mean, we have a lot of problems regarding the heat and the cold. So heating and cooling of homes become important. So if we can tweak the designs into certain kinds of, by using certain coordinates of construction, and then we can sort of reduce our electricity costs, we can reuse a lot of water, we can recycle wastewater, we can do rainwater harvesting, we can have insulations in floors, or we can have water-aided cooling, central cooling and central heating. And all these are possible through increasing the element of design. So we may need, in order to do these kinds of innovations, we really may need to move away from the normal RCC construction, moving more and more towards steel frame housings. And my PPT shows a lot of steel frame housing, actually. And you can see in the picture, you can see in the slides that you have steel frame reinforced housings. So once we have a steel frame reinforced housing, we are left with a lot more flexibility in the choice of material for the walls. So we have a slew of material for the wall. We have insulated cement boards. We have pre-stressed concrete. We have prefab walls. We can have wooden filing compressed walls. We can have sawdust compressed walls. We can have straw compressed roofs. False ceiling with straw. So all these, a lot of things are possible. But these possibilities need the development of commensurate development of activities in terms of setting up industrial, maybe not in industrial volumes, but at least definitely production facilities. Now, what happens in these designs is that we become much more attuned to the basic housing behavior of the Indians. Most Indians would love to construct their own houses. And we have been actually constructing our own houses traditionally all the time. But once this RCC construction comes in, then we are totally dependent on the contractor, we are dependent on the construction worker. So these are becoming difficult. Normally, house building activity in India is a DIY activity, which is why we need to have these materials in such a way that with the help of a few workers, you yourself can plan and design your house according to your need, and then put up those houses in the DIY format. So these would require a lot of innovation of local materials, of steel frames that reinforce the local materials, and we may keep the same design of the tribal housing, but just to make it more secure, have steel frames to secure them, steel wire meshes to secure them. In fact, products like fly ash bricks, products like glass wool sandwich walls, sandwich panels, these are also byproducts, actually waste products produced from our own steel industry. So I think that these are very important aspects of innovation, where we are bringing more and more innovative minds and lot more research into construction, and that is exactly where I think the money is going to be made from construction. Now, if you look carefully at the slides, I have put a lot of pictures in which we can see the new kind of living that we are going to have. So we have here, small, tiny living, people living in very well designed, compact square feet of about 200 to 300 square feet. We have, of course, again, tribal and indigenous homes. They're totally reinforced with steel roof, a GC roof, and steel frames. But they are completely tribal houses built out of tribal materials, except that these materials are now compressed and they are sort of made into a kind of alternative material, alternative designs using the same traditional material of houses. You can see a bamboo guest house. I mean, this is very, very amazing. So this is made out of bamboo boards, and this is actually quite a large construction. Then we have steel frames, as you can see, a lot of steel frames. And then we have a, very small hut of prefabricated structures. It can come to you in a packed condition. You can open and sort of set it up. Then we have these tubes. You can see these are water pipes, stacked on one another. This is a creation of James Law, the very famous architect of Hong Kong, and he has used these water pipes, to solve the housing problems. These are student hostels, and he's putting them on a floating structure and using the sea, the bay, to put up a student's hostel. I think these are very important innovations. And then you have absolutely at the right hand bottom, this is a kind of a housing colony, and you will be surprised to see that these are all used containers from railways and trucks and ships, which are now being converted into wonderful homes. So these basically are the areas of innovation. And yes, you can see that how these very simple bamboo homes of the Northeast are now being used. The steel is inside, you can't see the steel. So they don't like steel, so we only use it for the inside cover. And this is absolutely a perfect tribal house, but it's of course very well reinforced. So I think that these are very interesting and important innovations that we have. So what I'm trying to say is that you see in this slide you have this indigenous small house which can be built indigenously with a lot of indigenous materials, and you have the high-rise buildings. So obviously, I mean, on the right hand we have the high-rise, which is the prices, and here we have the design. So we have the alternative. We have basically the decision and a very sort of a razor's edge walk on whether we are going to go for mass market, which is only a speculation on prices, which makes living expensive, which makes housing expensive, which makes land prices go up. And once all these happen, I mean, land prices goes up, housing becomes expensive. We are losing on innovations and technology in the sector. But once we move towards indigenous houses, we move towards the rural areas, we move to tribal areas, it is then that we start looking at houses which are very design intensive, and they bring a lot of talent in terms of innovations of design and material in the housing sector. So I end my presentation here, and my slides are there with you, with the organizers. I'm sure that we can make a lot of, we can get a lot of ideas and proceed forward with this kind of a design in the future. Thank you so much. Thank you for giving me this opportunity, ICW. Thank you.
सेंटर में फूड प्रिजर्वेशन का ट्रेनिंग ले रही हूँ। यहाँ पे हम प्रैक्टिकल कर रही हूँ। यहाँ पे हमें अचार बनाना, जैम बनाना, जेली बनाना आदि सिखाया जाएगा।
ये है हापुड़ स्थित धौलाना में CIDC
उसके साथ यहाँ पे मार्केटिंग और पैकेजिंग भी सिखाया गया है। हम जॉब कर सकते हैं या जॉब नहीं करें तो उसके बाद हम अपना बिजनेस शुरू कर सकते हैं।
सबका सपना है एक
मैं CIDC और AI
और इनके इस सपने को उड़ान दी है एयरपोर्ट अथॉरिटी ऑफ इंडिया यानी AAI।
खुद खड़ा होना सिखाया इसको। थैंक यू।
मैं CIDC में ट्रेनिंग करने के लिए आया हूँ, जो कि मिनिस्टर ब्रह्मो इंजीनियरिंग कॉलेज में कराया जा रहा है, जो कि कोलकाता डिस्ट्रिक्ट में है, असम में। मैं जो ट्रेड किया हुआ हूँ वो है जनरल वर्क सुपरवाइजर का।
ऑटो लेवल एक डिवाइस होता है जिसके जरिए लेवल जमीन का और दूसरी चीज़ों का लेवलिंग किया जाता है। इस डिवाइस के मुख्य पार्ट्स हैं ये ट्राइपोड स्टेम में ये ट्राइपोड स्क्रू होता है जिसके जरिए इसका हाइट एडजस्ट किया जाता है और हाइट के साथ साथ इसका लेवल भी एडजस्ट किया जाता है।
इसने अब तक पूरे देश में तकरीबन 5 लाख लोगों को बढ़ाने और संवारने में मदद की है। AAI ने पहली बार 2015-16 में CIDC को 1000 बच्चों के कौशल विकास की जिम्मेवारी दी। पहले बैच के तकरीबन सारे बच्चों को अलग अलग कंपनियों में नौकरी मिली। तो 2016-17 में 2000 बच्चों को प्रशिक्षित करने का काम किया। इनका भी प्रशिक्षण पूरा हो गया और ये बच्चे अलग अलग कंस्ट्रक्शन कंपनियों में काम कर रहे हैं।
CIDC के बारे में
कुछ लोग स्वरोजगार भी कर रहे हैं। AAI ने चालू वर्ष में 2000 बच्चों को प्रशिक्षित करने की जिम्मेवारी CIDC को मिला,
इसलिए हम लोग जो
इन्हें धौलाना के अलावा CIDC के फरीदाबाद, गोरखपुर, रांची, डाल्टनगंज, सिधौली, रामसापुर और चापागुड़ी स्थित कौशल विकास केंद्रों पर प्रशिक्षण दिया जा रहा है।
अच्छा काम चुनेगा।
यहाँ मैं सिधौली CIDC सेंटर में में ट्रेड करने पे हम लोगों को आम के आसार, जाम, स्क्वायर बनाना सिखा रही है। तो यहाँ पे हम लोग ये बेल की स्क्वायर बना रही हूँ। तो ये सीखने के बाद हम लोग पैकेजिंग और मार्केटिंग भी सीखेंगे और सीख भी रही हूँ। और ये इसके लिए हमें तो फ्री में CIDC और AAI हमें तो फ्री में ट्रेनिंग दे रही है। इसके लिए हम CIDC को और AAI को थैंक यू बोलना चाहते हैं, जो हम लोग फ्री में ट्रेनिंग दे रहे हैं। और मैं ये सीखने के बाद मैं खुद में बिजनेस शुरू करूँगी। अगर मुझे हो सके तो मैं जॉब भी करना चाहूँगी।
My father is a teacher. I'm taking training in Muslim Trade and Nongstory Center. I have learned about the construction material, measurement, foundation, brick, masonry, extra from power, from solar power. After studying, I can work this trade and earn my living.
हम लोग अभी पहले तो हम लोग 200 रुपया ईसा मांगेगा। अभी
ये है हापुड़ स्थित धौलाना में CIDC यानी कंस्ट्रक्शन इंडस्ट्री
जो हम उसको हम लोग सीखेगा उसको हम लोग अभी
और अपनी तकदीर बदलने के लिए कड़ी धूप में मशक्कत करते ये बच्चे।
मैं असम से आई हूँ। मेरा डिस्ट्रिक्ट
सबका सपना है एक
मैं पहले से गोलाघाट इंजीनियरिंग कॉलेज में CIDC पार्ट की
Hi friends, I am Sanjeev Duggal, and let me talk a little about myself and my journey in steel sector before I take you through my presentation. I started my professional journey in SAIL in 1983 as a management trainee at the age of 20 and left SAIL as Chief General Manager at the ripe age of 53 to explore digital marketing as it was impacting marketing of all products in all markets. While in Steel Authority, I worked for all domestic markets, mainly three regions in domestic market, in international markets like US, Europe, Southeast Asia, and Bangladesh, so on and so forth. The pride was that we worked in rural markets also, and we laid the retail channel of Steel Authority in all the 600 districts of the country wherever they allowed steel. Going to the presentation, as you can see, COVID has not been able to impact much on the steel industry. Growth in steel industry has not been impacted globally, and whatever little impact that is there shall be normalized by July-September 21. As you can see, Indian steel consumption rose by 7.6% on month-to-month basis in October 20, and PSU steel giant SAIL posted a 21% growth in sales over CPLY and 14% growth in production. COVID-19 has not been able to impact the rural India as much as the urban centers. Rural India has contributed significantly to India's increase in online consumers. Millions of rural Indians have moved online thanks to inexpensive and smartphones. There are immense opportunities in rural India to foster steel demand, and it holds key to enhancing per capita steel usage in the country, which is very low for rural India presently, and which is 18 kg per capita, and for total India, it still remains to be only 76 kgs per capita. There's a strong housing demand in rural areas, and they have not been impacted by COVID. There's a strong demand of roofing sheets and steel bars for individual house builders in both rural and semi-urban areas. You can see that how the steel consumption is basically in construction and infrastructure sector, and it is more than 50% of the consumption in these sectors. So this is the place also where ultimately the steel consumption has to grow. As per the natural drive for a country like India, notwithstanding COVID setback, the construction activities established a natural growth path. This means more small houses in lower density areas. Remote working shall increase growth in suburban areas. For construction, historical reasons have made us focus more on concrete than on steel. But new mindset has to come, and the old mindset has to change. Designers are aware now of products like parallel flange beams, which are being produced both by Jindals as well as by Steel Authority of India Limited. While the mindsets have to change, we have to, the street level skilled manpower for concrete construction is available. Whereas for steel based construction, we require separate skills like welding and riveting, which skill sets are yet to be made available. And for the mindset to change, even these skill sets have to be there with all the people who are into the steel and construction industry. There's a lot of scope for rural infrastructure which can use steel construction and can be replicated across thousands of villages. As you can see, steel is used in residential and commercial projects, bridges, ports, highways, and is an ideal material for fast, safe, and economical construction. In residential buildings, use of steel helps in speeding of construction, reducing 20% of construction time. Imagine that amount of labor cost which is going to be saved if 20% construction time is going to be saved. Site management cost is also reduced to 3 to 4%. Minimizing floor-to-floor heights reduces the costs by 5%. Reduction in foundation cost is to the tune of 3% through steel usage. While if we come to commercial buildings, over and above these savings which we have done for residential buildings, in commercial buildings, even column-free space is also increased, and it gives us a better space by 1%. Energy consumption is reduced because of more open areas when the steel structurals are made and steel buildings are made. Steel structures are 100% recyclable. That's another great thing as far as the environment is concerned. Few areas which are drivers in the infrastructure for our country are going to be cleaning of Ganga project, civil aviation, more airports, railways, more highways, power, shipping, mining. We have to build a lot of smart cities and also smart housing everywhere in both urban and rural areas. In urbanization, we are going to get tremendous opportunities in this country. 700 to 900 million square meters of commercial and residential space is to be created. 2.5 billion square meters of roads are to be paved. 7,400 kilometers of metros and subways are to be built in next 15 years. Imagine the amount of steel which is going to be required, and imagine that how much steel is going to help in the urbanization of our country. There are further urbanization opportunities as new cities are developed on the industrial corridors. Also, 24% of urban population lives in slums and requires low-cost housing, which only steel can provide. There will be public transport. The public transportation today covers only 30% of the total trips, which needs to cover at least around 70 to 80%. So all this transportation will also be helped by steel. There are going to be pipelines laid all over for water supply, sewerage treatment, solid waste collection, and all these pipelines for water and sanitation are going to be basically of steel. Well, another thing where there is going to be a big opportunity for steel industry is that all these projects will need faster implementation and also low cost. I mean, also in housing. So, like if it's going to be a faster implementation, then it is the steel which is going to be the only answer. Also, we have to increase the connectivity very fast through roads, flyovers, metros, bridges, and there also the usage of steel is going to help tremendously. Now let me come to how a value-added stainless steel industry also stainless steel also is going to be consumed more in the rural areas for the advantage of rural people and for their progress and growth. If you will see that today around 60% of the milk goes a waste because we don't have stainless steel chillers. We are not able to preserve the milk for it to go to the proper dairies for further processing. Now also we will have stainless steel chillers, we will have stainless steel silos for foods and grains so that our foods and grains remain totally protected. Our fisheries are going to gain through stainless steel nets and stainless steel tanks. We are going to provide clean water supply to the villages through stainless steel tanks. We are going to have better health and hygiene in the rural area by using stainless steel toilets, which are now being used in Indian Railways also. Well, now let me come to my favorite subject, that how digitalization is going to help the rural areas. See, today we have to transfer knowledge to the rural areas that how steel can be used for construction at a cheaper cost for them. That can be done through digitalization, through use of videos and use of vernacular language in those videos and explaining them in those videos in a very simple manner, that how to make small and smart houses through steel. Also, by providing best quality steel through an e-commerce portal by steel companies in rural areas, like FMCG goods are being provided through Amazon and Flipkart, we are going to see that rural people are getting more smarter. Let me conclude by saying that it is evident that the future of steel industry in construction sector is bright in both urban and rural areas in India. Thanks for listening.
सेंटर में फूड प्रिजर्वेशन का ट्रेनिंग ले रही हूँ। यहाँ पे हम प्रैक्टिकल कर रही हूँ। यहाँ पे हमें अचार बनाना, जाम बनाना, जेली बनाना आदि सिखाया जाएगा।
ये है हापुड़ स्थित मौलाना में CIDC
उसके साथ यहाँ पे मार्केटिंग और पैकेजिंग भी सिखाया गया है। हम जॉब कर सकते हैं या जॉब नहीं भी करें तो इसके द्वारा हम अपना बिजनेस शुरू कर सकते हैं।
इन सबका सपना है एक
मैं
बेहतर
CIDC और AI
और इनके इस सपने को उड़ान दी है एयरपोर्ट अथॉरिटी ऑफ इंडिया यानी AAI।
खुद खड़ा होना सिखाया। थैंक यू।
मैं CIDC में ट्रेनिंग करने के लिए आया हूँ, जो कि बिनेश्वर ब्रह्मो इंजीनियरिंग कॉलेज में कराया जा रहा है, जो कि कोलकाता डिस्ट्रिक्ट में है, असम में। मैं जो ट्रेड लिया हुआ हूँ वो है जनरल वर्क सुपरवाइजर का।
ऑटो लेवल एक डिवाइस होता है जिसके जरिए जमीन का और दूसरी चीज़ों का लेवलिंग किया जाता है। इस डिवाइस के मुख्य पार्ट्स हैं ये ट्राइपोड में ये ट्राइपोड स्क्रू होता है, जिसके जरिए इसका हाइट एडजस्ट किया जाता है और हाइट के साथ साथ इसका लेवल भी एडजस्ट किया जाता है।
इसने अब तक पूरे देश में तकरीबन 5 लाख लोगों को उनका हुनर बढ़ाने और संवारने में मदद की है। AAI ने पहली बार 2015-16 में CIDC को 1000 बच्चों के कौशल विकास की जिम्मेवारी दी। पहले बैच के तकरीबन सारे बच्चों को अलग अलग कंपनियों में नौकरी मिली। तो 2016-17 में 2000 बच्चों को प्रशिक्षित करने का काम दिया। इनका भी प्रशिक्षण पूरा हो गया और ये बच्चे अलग अलग कंस्ट्रक्शन कंपनियों में काम कर रहे हैं। कुछ लोग स्वरोजगार भी कर रहे हैं। AAI ने चालू वर्ष में ये 2000 बच्चों को प्रशिक्षित करने की जिम्मेवारी CIDC
नहीं मिला, इसलिए हम लोग जो
इन्हें धौलाना के अलावा CIDC के फरीदाबाद, गोरखपुर, रांची, डाल्टनगंज, सिधौली,
Hello, good morning or good afternoon to everyone, depending on where you are. I am presenting this video from Melbourne. So this is morning here. Um, so it is my pleasure to be speaking on this conference. It's an important conference and very topical, and I'm really grateful to the organizer, especially CIDC, to reach out to me and requesting me to present on this very important topic. So the topic given to me to present in this conference is steel in construction towards sustainable infrastructure development. So there are quite a few topics given to me. Among those topics, I have actually picked up three topics: rural and urban housing for all, role of architects, designers for steel intensive buildings, sustainability of steel by green architect. So I am Professor Hemanto Doloi. I also direct Smart Villages Lab at the University of Melbourne, and my email address, if you wanted to write to me, hdoloi@unimelb.edu.au. So when I talk about sustainability and sustainable infrastructure, this is very important to understand what is the sustainability here. What is the meaning of sustainability? So it is, there are many different means, there are many different ways of defining sustainability. But in our case, I just wanted to quickly go to one of the very important references, which is the UNDP's Sustainable Development Goals. So within the UNDP Sustainable Development Goals, there are 17 goals defined, and this, if we can collectively get all these goals fulfilled for any interventions that we have got, whether this is sustainable, whether this is an infrastructure or any other intervention that we are doing for the community, we can precisely say that sustainability has been met. But then if you look at basically each of the goal here in terms of their definition and their intent, uh, essentially all the goals are converging to one single objective, which is basically that we need to really look into the sustainable practice across all the areas of community development. So housing and infrastructure is a big provision. This is very important for any community, and I think these goals more or less also reflect on that as well. So I think I will just go into that. And one of the important issues that I will be touching on here is basically community development, rural development, and the role of steel in terms of infrastructure, and then of course the sustainable practice. So why I talked about the rural community? The reason is that I have been working over last 4 years or so in this very important area of smart villages research. And smart villages is all about basically rural empowerment, looking at more about the rural community rather than the urban community. There has been many theories, many lots of work has been done in the urban areas, and when it comes to actually any new development, any infrastructure, the first thing that comes to our mind is the urban. But question here is that in this planet of almost 8 billion people, until today, there are 40% or more people still lives in rural areas. And these rural areas are basically confined to some very few countries like India, Bangladesh, Pakistan, and Africa and African countries, and so on. But yet, I think this is very important that this 40% or so population needs to be addressed in terms of their infrastructure need, in their modernization provisions, and so on and so forth. And in the context of India alone, as you know, that Indian government has given lots of priorities in terms of rural infrastructure, rural empowerment, and things like that. So there are many lots of public money has been spent for that sort of initiative, and I think this is very important that we do it something from the research properly with evidence based research support. That is very important, and as an academic at the University of Melbourne, that is what I do. I am an expert in research. I teach and I grow knowledge through research, and my current area of research is more about the rural focus, as I said. So within the smart villages context, we have got the smart villages lab, which is established for this purpose only. So we have been looking at more about the rural housing, rural infrastructure, rural economy, smart governance, and sustainability generally. So and I originally came from a state called Assam in India, and this particular work has actually started in Assam. The reason is that I have got connections in Assam, and I really wanted to help out in the rural community in Assam, and also and I speak the same language. I came from the same culture. This is much easier to do some work in the rural communities back in Assam. So over last 4 years, when I was working in this particular field, I have done quite a lot of work in terms of supporting the government with the new knowledge that is required for the rural development. And one of the important things that I have done in addition to my own research is establishing that international conference on smart villages and rural development called COSBIRD, and this is the third time running this conference annually. And we also try to get policymakers and academia around the world just to come along and share their research and other theories and practices in this particular area. So as I said that over last 4 years when I was working on this area, out of government of Assam support, I have been able to really look at some of the very important practices around the world in terms of rural development and rural housing and infrastructure. And then we try to also bring some of the existing knowledge in the context of smart villages, how the existing knowledge can be put together in the context of developing the smart villages. And this is one of the books that we have written and covered lots of international practices and quite customized to some areas in India and Assam in particular. So you can see here there are 12 different chapters, and every single chapter actually talks about what needs to be done in the context of developing the rural communities in smart villages. And if you look at these 12 areas, they are no different from the sustainability goals, UNDP sustainability goals that I have shown you, that 17 goals. So quite a lot of those goals are also addressed in this book as well. So that is where actually we are addressing the sustainability in this particular context. And our second book also we have written here. Why slide is not moving? This is another book that we have written here about the affordable housing. As you can see, this is more about the shelter and the house for the smart villages. Again, very much local in a rural context. And again, we have got quite a lot of understanding about how the houses should be designed, how the houses should be perceived by the community, and how we can actually take the community along with the policymakers and architects to make sure that the houses are 100% socially inclusive. To build a house, it is very important that we need to understand who are going to live in the house and whether these people are going to call this house as a home, and they are happy with their needs and the requirements. So these things, if you are not aligning well in from the very outset, the houses could be considered as not quite conducive for a family who is going to be the end beneficiary of the house at the end. So it is very important. So we need to understand the house from very many different aspects, like the culture and affordability and the material usage, the space planning inside and outside, and so on and so forth. Resilience, sustainability, and vulnerability, and all these elements are important in terms of designing a house. So this is our second book that we have gone a bit more deeper in terms of housing for smart villages. And most importantly, as I said, our this particular work initially was supported by the government of Assam, and because of that we had an obligation from our research lab to be able to bring all this knowledge in the context of Assam. So based on these two books and additional field work that we have done in Assam, we have also written a policy documentation as well for the government of Assam to be able to use this policy for developing the rural communities in Assam. And I'll talk more about Assam and the work that we have done over next few slides. But this is what basically so far we have achieved in this particular program. And as you can see, this cover page on this framework. Policy framework, you can see that there we are using steel for some of the vernacular houses in Assam, which are in the flood prone areas, to be able to modernize them. So steel is definitely one of the considerations here, and I will explain more about in what context we are trying to use the steel in those settings. So that is what my presentation is going to be over next 10 minutes or so. So talking about Assam, many of you might know that Assam is one of the states in India, in northeastern part of India, and Assam is basically connected with the mainland India with a chicken neck, as you can see, and that the red part is Assam, and Assam is also surrounded by 7 other states, and we call all together as 8 sister states in the northeast. So the Smart Villages program started there, as I said, and when we started the program from Assam, then of course we had to do some field work in Assam there. So Assam is a place of 35 million people population, and out of 35 million, about 28 million people, which is over 86%, people live in rural areas, very rural. Some of the areas are so rural that there is not enough connectivity from the mainland. So and also Assam has got lots of other natural calamities, including flood, which I'll talk as well. So these people are really poor and rural. So this is important that we understand something in that space, to be able to bring our scientific knowledge, bring our technological interventions to the benefit of those community. And this is a large community, as I'm saying, and India alone also has a large population living in rural as well. So this is important, that not only in Assam but also in the Indian context, this sort of research is very important. So talking about Assam and the natural calamities that Assam suffers every year, one of the natural calamities is the flood. As you know, Assam receives about 5,000 millimeter rain every year, and that rain, actually that much water has to be drained out to the Bay of Bengal. That is the only way. That means Assam acts as a catchment of that much water to be drained out to Bay of Bengal, and the major catchment channel is the river Brahmaputra, which is the widest river in the world. In some point, river Brahmaputra, one bank to the other bank, you cannot see. This is 15-20 kilometers long, and that is the reason why maybe you might know that a couple of recent bridges were built on river Brahmaputra, and one bridge that is called Holakhodia Bridge in Upper Assam is about 12 kilometers or so long. So these are the engineering marvel, but that is required for that sort of wide rivers. So in Assam, what happens actually, as I said, when 5,000 millimeter rain comes every year, and this water has to be drained out to the Bay of Bengal, and rainwater has to find their find the course of drain, and this is what happens here. So this could be, as I said, whole of Assam is a catchment area, because that much water to drain out requires a quite large area of catchment, and that is the reason why a large part of Assam gets inundated every year. And as you can see that these are the state of affairs today, that these houses are built on the catchment, and every now and then when the rain comes and monsoon season, these houses gets inundated, and property gets destroyed. So that means if we understand the nature, if we understand that this is the natural phenomenon, that Assam receives that much rain, Assam has to drain the water out to Bay of Bengal, we could have planned properly. But so up to unfortunately, up to a certain extent, some of the plannings were not quite right, and that is the reason why these people are suffering today. And this is a common phenomena. Many of you may have seen in media every monsoon season, that Assam gets very bad flood, and many houses are underwater. And this is a common phenomena. Every year it happens in Assam. So yes, I mean, natural calamities are there, but at the same time, this is not new. This been there for many 1,000 years. Always, that much water falls. And as you know, Cherrapunji in Meghalaya is the highest rainfall place in the world. So definitely, there are reasons, there are histories, and that is how basically the rain falls in that area. But then if we do not make our proper planning in terms of housing and infrastructure, which we call as sustainable infrastructure, then that means this, we are not able to address the natural calamities that we are talking about here. So that means, from that perspective alone, that if we can build the infrastructure, if we can build the housing which are free from flood, which can withstand the flood, and that is a sustainable infrastructure, from at least from the natural calamities point of view. So sustainability doesn't need any additional definition. Then I will be then talking more about the housing and the steel. That is the purpose, and I'm not going to deviate too much from there. But this is the context that I provided in the first place. So now, if you talk about Assam and the natural calamities happening every year, as I said, and these houses are getting inundated and properties are damaged. Then if you see this bottom picture here, in fact, some of the houses are there in the flood prone areas, and this is used by the people, the local people, and they have been there for many years. This is the culture. So there are people, as you can see, the left hand side, this house is right on the water body, and the right hand side is another house on the stilt, but not in the flood prone area. So these are the houses that people do live, and they are, of course, the poor communities, but they are village communities, and these people exactly know how to live by the flood. So there were enough smartness among the people in terms of finding their own solution that withstand the flood. And today also that is exists, in Assam, across the valley of Himalaya, you can see lots of these houses exist. And these people are happy because they know exactly flood will come and go, but they will rather use the flood for their living, in terms of free fishing and so on and so forth. And the flood, when it comes, it brings the natural river silt as a fertilizer, and actually after the flood season, these villagers can get bumper crop season, because without costing any money on their fertilizers. So this whole valley of Himalaya, valley of Brahmaputra is very fertile land. Yeah, and then on the right hand side, this particular house, they are on the flood prone areas, and when it's a lean period, dry period, they use actually the underneath their house as their storage, including livestock. So pigs and cows and other chicken and ducks, they use those livestock under the house. So they are smart, and they have got all purpose houses built with the local material rather. So this is very smart solution, sustainable solution. But now with modern age, we are actually trying to replace these houses with brick and mortar, as you can see on the right hand side, and that is where we are suffering more in terms of our property damage. First of all, these houses are expensive. Brick and mortar houses are expensive, and when they get flood, of course, property get damaged. So we need to really learn from nature, and we need to also learn from the local knowledge. This is very important. So then when it comes to local knowledge and rural development, and talking about very specifically about housing, that's what I'm now going to discuss about. What is the role of housing? How can we define and design the house? What is the role of practitioners and the architects? And how potentially we can use steel as our one of the structural elements for modernizing those rural houses. So housing is a big problem in the region, no doubt, not only in Assam but whole of Northeast and also in India. And then shortages are there, but resilience and sustainability is important with India houses. So some of the houses that I have shown you, yes, they are good. People have used their local skill to be able to build those houses and withstand the flood, but then not necessarily to be highly resilient or safe. So it is very important that when we modernize these houses, we look after those elements as well. So that is the reason why Indian government has put lots of effort for program like Housing for All, which is very important because they are definitely modernizing some of the houses for those rural communities and providing them with the modern lifestyle in a way. So definitely there are some great plans, but not necessarily that all the plans are working effectively. So talking about the plans and the schemes, this is one of the major schemes, as many of you might know. UNDP's design of PEHEL, supporting the Prime Minister's PMAY scheme in India. So that's been going on for a long time. As you know, that India is now building massive amount of housing, unprecedented number of housing for with a mantra, the housing for all. So everybody has to have a proper house. But question here is that with that modernization, with that mass building of the houses, are we really looking after the community's need? Are we looking after the vernacularism and culture and character of the houses? And are we really building the housing stock in a way that will not only retain values over time, but also leave keep the characters of those communities at large? This is very important. These are some of the areas that we have done through this program, Smart Villages program, some important research, and I'm going to share research findings with you. So talking about PEHEL, this is one of the this is the compendium that was given to build the houses in India, and every single state in India receives a very particular housing model depending on the geographic and other considerations by the UNDP expert team, no doubt. And when it comes to Assam, they have looked at some of the requirements within Assam, and what they have done, actually they have broken the Assam into 5 different zones, zone A to zone E. And so within these 5 different zones, they have been able to give 5 different housing models that is going to be purpose built for those areas. So no doubt there is a good intention, but unfortunately some of those intentions are not quite translating into the real benefits. As you can see from here, I'm just going to take zone number 3 as an example. So zone number 3 is the hilly area, which is, if you go from Guwahati to Dibrugarh towards east, on the right hand side is the Mikir Pahar, Mikir Hill, which is the which is the border of Nagaland. So there are huge communities out there in the hilly area, and this hilly area is actually characterized here as zone number 3. And I'm just going to give you an example of what sort of houses were proposed in for zone number 3 and how those houses are basically developed in that area. So this is one of the models of zone number 3, and as you can see, this is a 2-bedroom, rather 3-bedroom small house with a kitchen and a veranda at the front and veranda at the back. So this is just a square house that was there in UNDP as one of the most useful and purpose built plans for that particular zone. But now if you look at in reality, what these people have been receiving is something different. Again, I'm just not saying that these pictures that I have taken from Assam are exactly from that location, that zone, but could be a bit of a disparity there. But yet I'm saying that PMAY scheme has delivered some of the houses of this kind in Assam. And as you can see, these houses are simply the brick and mortar with some basic amenities and functions. So these houses are not quite modernizing the people the way it should be modernizing. The intent was good, but I don't think that the products are good at this stage. Now this is another house that you can see was built out of the PMAY scheme, and this house is rotting without even being um, uh, utilized. So you can see that someone has to build this house, and I don't know who are the contractors and who has given the authorities to build these houses. These are just 3-inch brick wall, and with some basic doors and windows, and roof on the top, and that they call this one as a house for this community, which is given under that public scheme, which is for free. Now question here is that if you start building this kind of houses, and this is another one, so these houses, I wanted to ask anyone listening to this particular talk, that how many of us are going to be happily taking this free shelter as our own house, to live there as our home. So I think not many of us will take this one even it is given for free, because the reason is that these houses are not purpose built. They are not meeting any of the purposes of a shelter. And so because this is free, this is coming from the public scheme, and this has to be built, so you are building it. So this is not how the houses should be modernized for the rural community. The rural community has the dignity. They have got their own character. They have been living on their own way. So if we are modernizing those people, we rather modernize them from the existing knowledge of that community. We need to make sure that we take them on board while we are building the houses for them, so that it does not really deteriorate over time, and it rather retains the values and the characters, and these houses becomes an important stock for not only for the community but generally. So this is very important that we need to consider that. So this is another example. As you can see, the old house was where that the blue panels are, and then because they have got some money and free of cost, the public schemes are being rolled out, so brick and mortar is coming, so they have decided to take some of the walls off and changing that to brick and mortar. So this is not how the houses should be built. And when houses are built, this is not to be built by the people who do not have proper skill. So that is where that role of architects and practitioners come into play. And this role of architects and the practitioners, they have to influence the design in a way that the government is empowered. Government has got the capacity to be able to build these houses that reflects the character of the community and retains the value over time. And these houses are just not doing that at this stage. So talking about Assam, it is very important that we design the houses which are purpose built and which are based on the evidence. So it is very important. So when we talk about any particular community, we need to understand what that community is and what sort of housing do they like and how they have been living there for so many centuries. And this is very important to understand that. And of course, I understand that for UNDP kind of design and for Prime Minister's scheme, it is difficult to do this evidence-based, field-based research and design something. But over the time, that is not an excuse. We need to still grow the knowledge and bring that sort of knowledge into the practice. So in Assam, there are about 300 unofficial tribes, but 115 official tribes. Let's say, different community, different culture, different language, different food, and so on and so forth. So everything is different. So these people, they live in smaller pockets, and Assam is not a great, very big state, about 78,000 square kilometer land area, but then. And these people, they live there in smaller pockets, as I said, maybe 25 40 kilometer, if you go from one end to the other, one spot to the other, then you might come across 3 different communities of that kind. So these people are very important to understand, and especially that zone 3 I'm talking about. There are lots of this kind of tribal communities living there, and they have got their own culture, very unique culture, and this is very important to understand that. Yeah, in Assam, 26,000 villages are there, and if you also look at India, about 600,000, 6 lakhs villages are there in India. So I think um, Indian villages are really the icing on the cake, I would say, because Indian villages are very unique and across the board. And these villages, if we can retain the value and the culture and the character, it could be one of our biggest assets in long run, in terms of people coming over to India, and then witnessing that rural culture, rural character. So not many part of the world has got that much character that India has today. But if we do not retain them, and if we simply modernize those houses with brick and mortar that I have shown the example, so what will happen? You think about it, that 6 lakhs villages will have that kind of brick and mortar houses, and all the characters are gone at the end. And then finally, and these people neither has got any development or any empowerment by having those shelters built with brick and mortar. Rather, if we just think of understanding this community and letting them develop their own houses with their vernacular knowledge, vernacular requirements, that will be a much better outcome at the end. So that is the reason why this research is very important, and our work was focusing onto that. So when it comes to housing design, housing is definitely a shelter, of course, and but then along with that, the space management, space design, culture and value, heritage and history, and anthropological considerations, aesthetics, local materials and skills, capacity development, vernacular regime and preservations, all are very, very important. So what I'm going to do over next few slides, talking about just taking 4 communities, 4 tribes of zone 3, just to show you what sort of houses they build, and what sort of houses do they live, and what is the meaning of those houses for those communities, whether they are common or different. And this work is done by one of my PhD students by the name of Bhelin Katharpi in the Smart Villages program, and this is courtesy to her. So I'm just bringing Bhelin's work just to share with the audience. So this is a traditional Kuki house. So there are 4 different communities I'm going to discuss here from that particular zone: Kuki, Karbi, Dimasa, and Labang. So there are 4 different communities. As I said, 115 official tribes are in Assam, and more than 300 plus tribes are unofficial tribes still exist. So I'm just taking only 4 tribes here just to show you how they call their shelter as home. What is the meaning of that? So a traditional cooking house up on the mountain looks like this, and these are all very sustainable house, by the way. So these are local material and locally built. So there is no any money spent in a way. So these are all carbon neutral, zero cost houses that people are living there happily. And these people, when they build their house, there are lots of very important considerations. For example, these cookie houses, the way that they plan the space is different from the other houses. So for example, other communities, for example, they have got an entry here and then storage on the right, and suspended shelf and cooking area on the left, a main hall in the center, and raised platform at the back. So these are the characters of these communities in their houses. Then I will actually compare all these houses, the 4 different communities houses, in one slide a bit later. You can see what is the meaning of that. So cookie house, then if you look at, these are sectional views, and this particular picture shows about the cookie houses are not simply a single house that you can really think of. It is a cluster of houses. So the one house may, what we have shown you is single house, but this single house cannot be looked at as a very single entity, but rather this has to be looked at as a cluster of entities, because every single house has a very particular position and very particular way of connecting to the other space and other houses as well. So as you can see, yeah, main house, wood fireplace, vegetation garden, toilet, back entrance, tea stall, house under construction, community well, football field, and these are all the areas, all the elements that one has to consider when designing the house in the village settings. Okay, and this is very important. And sometimes one single dwelling could be slightly different from the others within this cluster, but yet the overall characters will be quite similar. So now moving to the next one is the Karbi house. Karbi house, again, this is a floor plan here. It is a bit small and you can see all of those, and this is not the purpose here just to look at every single space with a microscopic view, but yet I just wanted to give you kind of a comparison just to highlight the fact. Sorry, highlight the fact that this every single community has got different needs. So this Karbi house has got a different kind of setup, and this is the sectional view. And this is the traditional look of the Karbi house. As you can see, this house is slightly different from the previous house, Cookie house, but yet they are also made from the local materials, and they are also on the steel as well. And you can see and again there are cluster of houses, so not only one house, because this what happens, one family tend to stay next to their relatives, and then family grows like that. So the cluster of houses are somehow the extended families may be quite well connected to each other, or even though someone new coming and building, they will find a place building something very close to the other houses. It's not something like these people are basically independent of each other. They are very much dependent community. Now, Karbi community has got this kind of clusters as well. These clusters are again shown here. I don't want to go into too much details, but you can see that these are the important considerations for village design. So traditional Dimasa house looks like this. That's a third community I'm talking about. Again, local material, local skill they have used, but yet this house looks different. So the floor plan itself will be also different as well. This is a very much long house compared to the other houses, which are houses with kind of similar space, kind of slightly rectangular than this one. Sorry. And this is sectional view. And then finally, this is the Dimasa house. Again, a cluster of houses are being shown here. And every single cluster, if you look at it, that is what actually Valin Katharpi has done. They are all different. They all, have a different characters of the clusters of the houses as well. So which house goes where and where, they have got, social, space and other areas. They are all very much well defined within their community, but if you look at very carefully, they are not similar to the others. So they are all different. This is Lebang house. Lebang house, again, the traditional house looks like this. As you can see, again, the local material, local skills used, but yet the house looks different from the others. And again, this is a rectangular house as well. Rather than, more than the rectangular, is a long house. It's rectangular, but it's a long house. And this house, how it is oriented, also needs to be understood as well, and which I will show you in a comparative slide. So again, cluster of the Labang houses look like this. And then if you look at here, this is the slide I'm talking about. The 4 different communities houses are shown in single page. As you can see, Karbi houses, they are actually parallel to the street. Labang houses, they are long side. Short side is parallel to the street, and long side is basically perpendicular to the street. And the Kuki villages are also quite similar to the Karbi villages, but Dimasa villages are slightly different in terms of their street orientation. So these are some of the extracts that I have taken from the work done by Valin. The houses are not squared or cubical in volume, but oblong in shape. The houses are built either in 2 by 4 or 3 by 4 ratio. The Kuki and Karbi case houses are oriented with the long side of the house facing the street, while Dimasa and Labang houses are oriented with the short side facing the street. Entrance of the houses is directly from the street in front of the house, meaning that Kuki and Karbi house entrance was on the long side, while Dimasa and Labang house is on the short side. So these are some of the very interesting findings, because these houses, if you simply go and replace with brick and mortar and any orientation as you think it will be okay for the community, and that is not necessarily to be the case. And also the space itself is quite different. So some families, some of the, if you look at those floor plans very carefully, some of the communities, they will have the kitchen at the front. Some of the communities, they will have the kitchen at the back. Some of the communities have the male and female space quite separated, and some of the communities will have the male and female space combined together. And some of the communities again may have female space front, male space back, and some other communities will have just other way around. So the female space back and male space at the front. So there are so many different ways of perceiving this space within the community, and if we do not understand from our practitioners point of view, we cannot really build something that can retain the culture and the value and the heritage of these houses. So that is very important, that we take appropriate considerations for those needs. And I'm talking about mega scale here. So 6 lakhs villages across India, you imagine, I'm sure every single village will have the different characteristics to share. So if we do not have a sincere effort to capture that information and design the houses for these communities accordingly, so we will eventually lose the characters over time. So layout and space comparisons across these 4 communities here. Again, Kuki, Karbi, Dimasa, and Labang, you can see that their space requirement is different. Their perception of the space is different. For example, if you look at here, cooking, sleeping, dry storage, wet storage, fireplace, door, window, and difference in elevation. So they are all different. So I don't want to go into too much details at this point in time, because this is not my direct work. It is under my supervision. Valin has done the work, but this work will be available through our thesis and other publications as well very soon. But essentially, the point here is that this space is very important for a particular community to understand, and that space space is something that to be taken into consideration when we are designing the floor plan for these houses. Then if you look at the common typologies of the houses across the state of Assam, there are many different typologies exist. So we call mud house, Assam type house, bamboo timber house, RCC concrete. Of course, this is a very modern house that many people build even in villages, and raw brick houses. So these are some of the typologies that we try to put together what we can get as an Assam. But then when we are going and modernizing these houses, we got to really again understand the characters of these houses, and accordingly we have to come up with the right design. So in our work at the Smart Villages Lab, we try to mimic some of the vernacular houses with modern kind of look. And this is a computer model, as I mentioned before, that we have done some research and also come up with some models, and this is what we have come up with. So this particular house, if you really wanted to go on a complete modernization, maybe this is the way to go, and this house looks something like this, at least from the outset. From the outside. But if you wanted to really keep the vernacular look, of course, that outside envelope could be local materials which can give exactly similar look. But in terms of the resilience and structural stability of the houses, it has to be built, on the solid structural system. And that is where now I will show you how the steel has been used. Actually, these houses we have model keeping steel as our structural frame. So if you look at this picture here, The left hand side are all the different kinds of vernacular houses that has been taken from the village, and right hand side is all about basically how best you can modernize them. These are again computer models, and as you can see the right picture here, and we have shown you a sectional view, that this house, as I said, has the structural frame as the you know as the structural component for this house. And so on the top is our that steel structure called LGS frame, light gauge steel structure. That is what basically we are calling as most useful and appropriate technology, because these houses are sitting in a very kind of some of the terrains like very sandy. They are in the shore areas, which is basically the floodplain areas, and foundation is a big problem there, and generally the houses are not quite strong to withstand all the issues, natural calamities, as I said. So it is important that we design some of these structural systems there. They are going to give them the stability and resilience. So this steel frame, that is the reason why we have promoted to use in these models, as I said. And we have also done some there's a prototype that I have built just show that effectiveness of this steel structure for these houses, which I'm going to show you shortly. And we have also done some other analysis as well in terms of structural considerations of wind load and rainfall intensity, and also soil conditions. And it is feasible that it is these houses can be modernized using steel. So this is a small model that we have built out of the LGS frame. And again, I have shown a couple of important messages here. Firstly, that LGS frame itself, what it is, I want to show to the community back in rural areas, because in rural areas, what happens if you just tell them, look, we are going to build a house with steel, they are going to say no, because they do not even think that steel is a housing product at all. Steel is a material for building rural houses. They do not think that. So when it comes to steel, they think about railway bunkers, railway lines, and railway stations, and the big warehouses, for maybe industrial warehouses. This is what they perceive steel to be look like. So if you are bringing the steel into their houses, it is very important that you tell them, look, steel is simply going to give you the structural stability, and this is going to just give you the structural frame of the house. But in terms of actual fit out, it could be still very local, and your house will still keep the character. So that is the reason why this particular frame was built with my students at the University of Melbourne. And again, another important message that I wanted to bring here is that without any skill, the local people can actually put together this frame, because this is all coming from a very sophisticated machine, including the holes are punched, and based on the drawings and the layouts, one can erect it very, very easily. So now I'm going to run this video, which is just 2 minutes. Please enjoy, and then I'll talk about that one a bit later. If you have any questions about what are the other aspects of any of the elements that we need to consider further. So in this frame, what we have done actually, we have got the frame from a company who is promoting LGS in Melbourne. So they had given us for free this prototype to be built, and then another interesting point that we have tried to cover here is the foundation system. So another company in Melbourne, they promote, they have their own design of a very innovative foundation system called concrete-less foundation system, and the company is called Surefoot. So they are the one who has given me the foundation solution for this particular shade, and this foundation is is a very interesting one. So it is just a steel plate and with some holes, and the holes are basically used to drive about 50 mil steel pipes as the micro pile. So the pile goes into all different directions, 6 or 7 piles depending on how many holes are there and depending on the load of the structure. So then these piles are driven using the jackhammer and finally attached to the that steel plate, and that actually gives a very good bearing capacity depending on the, of course, soil type, because our Melbourne, this soil where I have built this particular shade is a rocky soil. But in Assam, of course, we have got the problems with clay and sand, especially along the shore areas, the flood prone areas. But yet the foundation system is very important. So in Assam at the moment, the way people build the foundation, and they spend lots of money in the foundation alone, mainly steel and concrete, but it has got lots of effort and skill and material cost, and it takes quite a big chunk of overall cost of the building in the foundation. So and also this is not very conducive in terms of the rural areas, because materials are not very easily transportable, and the skills are not there. So we need to really find out some innovative foundation solution as well. So that is what I was trying to bring that point here. But in the hilly area where I talked about the zone 3, I think this kind of foundation can work, the concrete-less foundation. Imagine that if this kind of foundations can be promoted, can be proven to be useful, then the people, rural people can build their own houses with this kind of structure, and which will be much more modern and much more resilient. So once that kind of systems can be in place, so it is very easy to fit out that structural system with local materials inside and outside, so that it still looks quite like a original village house. So that is the purpose here. That is what the message we were trying to give. And in fact, after having this demo set built and showing to many people around the villages, people do understand that this is possible, and this is something that is potentially beneficial for the community in terms of building their resilient houses. So key components of and deliverables of these houses will be, of course, the local material has to be used, local skill needs to be used. Sustainable design is very important, not only in terms of the material usage, but also the heating and cooling and running expenditure of the houses as well, including the carbon footprint. So this is very important, and quite a lot of work needs to be done by the design community to come up with that kind of design, which are in long run cheaper and sustainable as well. And one of the good things about this particular system that we are promoting here, which is the LGS system, light gauge steel structure, it is offshore construction is possible, or sorry, offset construction is possible. Prefabricated units are also possible, and locally people can develop the skill and build it. So it doesn't require a significant amount of skills, professional skills. So it is very much doable because it is very much under the control environment from the factory, and that every single element and the members are cut to the precision. And once one understands how it connects together, one can build it. So it is a matter of basically getting some basic skills developed and building their own sets. So I think a lot of work needs to be done in terms of the practice and design community, including the new foundation systems, which is terrain specific or contextual kind of design. It is very important. So I think that is where we are lacking some big knowledge, good knowledge. So it is very important that our community looks into that. And these are some of the examples that we looked at different footing systems from around the world. And in fact, that concreteless foundation system that this Sure Food company is promoting in Melbourne, and they have been very successful in building even the massive warehouses on that side, that kind of footing systems. So I think this footing definitely shows a good kind of potential to be modifying and customizing for the need of some of those houses back in Assam, at least, if not other part. So lightweight steel structure is important. Another very important thing that we try to propose here, of course, showing here is the the blended use of steel with other materials, so that at the end of the day, depending on what you um, where you build and how you want your house to be look like, you can give that sort of aesthetic appearance. So this is important. So the blended material usage is also important. This is another slide. Here you can see that light gauge steel structure has been used, but fit out is pretty much the local material. So at the end of the day, this steel is not visible. So not many people know that this is built from steel. So, and this is another example as well. So no matter what sort of structural system you use, at the end the looking has to be very much local. So that is where you can see that uptake of these houses will be high, and retention of the culture and the character will be ensured. This is an example of, again, bamboo fit out kind of internal shade, again with blended material used. And this is again just some pictures. They are not directly from Assam. I have taken the pictures from other parts, including some pictures from Indonesia, but these are simply the ideas that these houses can be fitted with local materials to look like as these are the vernacular houses, but structural frame is still steel. And this is again another example here. Again, this is a house with steel structure, but yet with quite a lot of local materials being used, internal and outside, just to give you that that feeling, that look. This is another example here. So what we have done in the context of our this Assam prototypes, we have actually gone out to about 37 villages in the river island Majuli. There are about 2,500 households live there. So we have gone into every single household across 37 villages and tried to do some comprehensive survey to see basically what sort of skills do they have, what sort of houses people use, what sort of materials they use, and then we have collected that information in a very smart way. So we have used the smart phone and an app, and which we designed, purpose built app with all the survey questions in there. And then we have used that kind of system to be able to collect the information in a very limited time. So about 4 months we have been out there in the field and collected that information from about 2,500 households. And these are some of the information that we have got in our hand. When it comes to designing of those houses for those communities, we can see basically what local materials are available, what sort of skills are there, and what people will prefer, what people would not prefer, and things like that. Again, you can see the wall material, normally what sort of walls that people use or prefer versus what sort of flooring that they prefer. So these are the information that we have collected, as I said, from the community with the first-hand data. So similarly, the energy usage, what sort of energy usage currently have, what sort of energy usage they can afford, and or readily available energies are there, energy is there. So these are the important considerations as well for housing design. So these are the information that we have collected, and our research is still ongoing, but that is what we have done so far. So our idea here is that in a single message, that custom built, customized houses are very important for every single community within the village community, so that their culture and value and characters are retained over time. Thank you. Any questions and comments? I'm more than happy to answer.